The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Cook, Coram,
Excused.
Danielson,
Good morning.
Donovan, Fields,
Present.
Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Henriksen, Heisey, Holbert, Jaquez Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Lee, Liston, Lundin, Moreno, Pedersen, Priola, Rankin,
Excused.
Rodriguez, Scott, Simpson, Smallwood, Sonnenberg,
Good morning.
Sonnenberg,
Good morning.
Story,
Here.
Winter, Woodward,
Excused.
Zenzinger. Mr. President,
Here. The morning roll call is 32 present, 0 absent, 3 excused. We have a quorum. Will the good senator from Aurora please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal, Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to serve with you. I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, March 25th, the year of our Lord, 2022, be dispensed with, and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
correctly printed Senate Bills 175, 176, 177, 178, 179, and 180. Correctly engrossed Senate Bill 53. Correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 178, 55, 57, 110, 153. Correctly revised House Bill 1008, 1024, 1060, and 1168. Correctly enrolled Senate Bill 3, Senate Bill 76, 105, and 121.
Third reading of bills. Final passage. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over Senate Bill 53 and House Bill 1168 to tomorrow, Tuesday, March 29th.
The motion is to lay over Senate Bill 53 and House Bill 1168 until tomorrow, March 29th. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and those bills will be laid over. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1024?
House Bill 1024, Representatives Byrd and Woog, Senators Hanson and Kolker, concerning an expansion of the existing sales and use tax exemption for construction and building materials used for the building of public works to require that home rule cities exempt such tax on sales of such materials when used for public school construction and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1024 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Oh, Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, my apologies for coming down here on third reading. When we heard this bill, I was actually in the chair, so I was unable to make my comments at that time. With great respect to the sponsors, I want to explain a little bit about why I'm going to be a no vote on House Bill 1024 today. The intentions behind this bill are very noble. I very much agree with the end use that is being called into play here, which is exempting the taxes that are collected from contractors on public school construction. However, my objection is not to the purpose, but the fact that we're even doing it at all. Because I very firmly believe that this is a violation of the Constitution. I believe that the state does not have any business telling a home rule local authority what they can and cannot tax when it comes to their own tax. It's not a state tax. Now, the state does provide this benefit, but the home rule municipalities also have the authority to determine what kind of taxes that they issue. It is done through the same means that our taxes are collected through. And they have the sole discretion to determine whether or not to collect it. The state should not interfere with that. The power to levy these sales and use taxes for the support of local home rule government is essential. It is critical to the right of self-government. And this is actually enshrouded in our state constitution. So I think that by passing this bill today, regardless of how noble the cause is, sets a really dangerous precedent. I also heard, oh, but only a few do it. I think only a handful, like 5. Well, it is absolutely within the discretion of those 5 to do it. It is not within our purview. So because of the dangerous precedent that I think that this sets around the preemption of powers that are given to our home rule municipalities, literally enshrined in our Constitution in Article 20, I see this as being very dangerous. Also, I would like to add that it does nothing on the side of public school finance. It doesn't actually help aid in that, which, would be the thing that would tug at my heartstrings. Personally, I would get very close to blending those lines in favor of benefiting our schools and our school districts with regard to their financing, but it doesn't actually do that. So I just wanted to come down and clarify what my no vote entails and why, and I thank you very much for your time.
Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was a county commissioner during the Great Recession. We had, up at the state level here, the budgets were being cut. It was not a fun time to be on the JBC or actually probably anywhere in this chamber. We had a state senator make the mistake of showing up at a county commissioner meeting one time while they were busy cutting the budgets and shifting those costs to local governments. We let him know what that was costing the county, what costs were being shifted. We got the answer, that's not my problem. I'm responsible for the state budget. We were not impressed. In this case, we're shifting costs to the local governments. I think the number I heard was about $17 million that we can build additional schools with by shifting those costs or telling the governments they can't collect a tax that they're legally allowed to collect. So we're shifting the burden. And this is in a time of largeness in state government. We've never had this much money before. I don't understand how we could do this to the local municipalities, the local districts, to the counties and expect them to maintain the services that they currently maintain. I urge a no vote.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise and ask for a no vote. To explain my opposition, I think the words could not be expressed better than an email that we all received from Kevin Balmer, Executive Director, Colorado Municipal League, Incorporated Municipalities. Where I live, I don't actually live in one of those. My friend from Douglas, we laugh that we are both senators who actually don't live in Parker, but we represent incorporated municipalities and the people who live there. Dear members of the Colorado Senate, this would be Executive Director Balmer, I am writing this morning to present to you a complete and accurate picture of House Bill 22-1024 and respectfully request your no vote. I share Executive Director Balmer's perspective. I respectfully request your no vote. Because of the length of prior legislation, the full scope of the bill was not put into the record on second reading this past Friday. I intended to speak, but a reporter asked me a question there and I was distracted and the bill was passed on second reading, and I apologize to those who were counting on me to do that. Those things do happen, but here I am on thirds. On Friday, you were told by one sponsor that House Bill 22-1024 is a simple bill. One of the first lessons that I offer to legislators-elect is there's no such thing as a simple bill. If somebody tells you, hey, I've got a simple bill and you're your first year, run, because it isn't. It means that the other folks who are returning have already said no. Meant to help limited state resources, though that's also in quotes, help limited state resources going to school construction. You were told that it was a statewide interest to provide accurate and modern schools. Aside from all the rhetoric, what you were not told on the floor is that the core of the bill is an assumption that the state can dictate to home rule municipalities what may be included in their local sales tax base. And in this case, that home rule cities must adopt of the state's nearly 80 sales tax exemptions. While the arguments of the proponents and sponsors may sound appealing, they are short on facts and realities that you must consider before casting a vote on third and final reading, especially that allowing the state legislature to dictate the local sales tax base of home rule municipalities violates Article 20, Section 6 of the Colorado Constitution as affirmed by the Colorado Supreme Court 3 times. Even when the impact of a sales tax is conflated with an issue of a statewide concern. What the record does show in Senate Finance, as well as in the House, is that the only predictable fiscal impact that will occur will be on the taxpayers of home rule municipalities that will be forced to defend for a 4th time, and that House Bill 1022 will do nothing to change the state's woeful history in funding schools. The prospect of the state legislature being able to dictate any part of a home rule municipality's tax base, while politically popular, is exceptionally dangerous, which is why the court has ruled definitively that local sales and use taxes are a matter of local and municipal concern. And those words are also in quotes, local and municipal concern. We are not elected to a local legislature, we're elected to the state legislature. So we should pay attention when someone points out that courts have ruled 3 times already and would need to, for a 4th time, rule that local sales and use taxes are a matter of local and municipal concern. And the clever attempt to try to subvert the Constitution with language added in the House doesn't change these legal facts, based on constitutional interpretation. As argued in both the House and in the Senate, neither chamber is the proper and legal venue to argue for changes in local sales and use tax. Rather than supporting a politically popular bill that is destined to be overturned again, the solution is to advocate locally to mayors and councils, run a local ballot initiative, or run for local municipal office. Because while you may be able to justify a vote to support education, you must confront that supporting this unconstitutional preemption means that you are willing to open the door to allow the state to try to force exemptions on anything in the local sales tax base and impact local programs that you might care about. Parks and recreation programs, support for the homeless, affordable housing programs, public safety, and the list goes on. Please do your part to uphold and defend the Constitution and settled constitutional law. Keep local control and home rule at home. Please vote no on House Bill 22-1024. You may also wish to review CML's position paper on House Bill 22-1024, which also cites the 3 prior Colorado Supreme Court decisions. Thank you for your consideration. Warmest regards, Kevin. Again, Kevin Baumer, Executive Director, Colorado Municipal League. Well, you don't need to refer to their official position paper because I have that here too. Colorado Municipal League, which is an organization that sometimes I've sided with, other times I have not. House Bill 22-1024, Sales and Use Tax, Preemption of Home Rule Taxing Authority. Your opposition and no vote respectfully requested. In Colorado, voters enshrined the principle of home rule into the Colorado Constitution to ensure self-governance and freedom from state government interference on matters of purely local and municipal concern. High on the list of those matters is the right of home rule municipalities and their respective citizens to set their own sales and use tax base. House Bill 1024 proposes to upend this right in a manner that is unconstitutional and backed by settled law by attempting to force home rule municipalities to follow the exemption the state of Colorado gives for public school construction use tax collected from contractors. This exemption is one of nearly 80 enshrined in the state's tax base. Whether one agrees that this or any other tax should be collected by home rule municipalities is a matter solely for the citizens of home rule municipalities, not the General Assembly. The Colorado Supreme Court has affirmed this through 3 seminal decisions. First, Berman v. Denver, 400-page, holding that the home rule right to levy a tax to raise revenue for city operations is a constitutional authority, not a statutory one. The provisions of sales and use tax ordinances adopted by the city relate to matters of local or municipal concern within the meaning of Article 20, Section 6 of the Colorado Constitution. They were adopted to raise revenue with which to conduct the affairs and render the services performed by the city. Second, Security Life and Acceptance Company versus Temple. The activity of the entity taxed is not controlling when testing whether Denver is acting in purely local and municipal matter. The point is that the power to levy sales and use tax for the support of local home rule government is essential to the full exercise of the right of self-government granted to such cities under Article 20, Section 6. That the power to levy and collect within Denver excise taxes, such as the sales tax, is purely local and municipal concern, was delineated clearly in Berman v. Denver. The state, when acting under its regulatory powers, cannot prohibit home rule cities from exercising a power essential to their existence, parentheses, local taxation, end parentheses. 3, Winslow Construction Company versus City and County of Denver. Upheld Berman and Security Life. Berman and Security Life stand for the proposition that the imposition of local sales taxes and use taxes is a matter of local concern. We will not overrule them. These three cases clearly establish that the venue for this discussion is within the city councils and voters of the municipalities that tax this or any other item that one may not like.
Mr. Minority Leader, would you like to go into your next 10 minutes?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. It is of no relevance that public schools and public school funding matters may be of statewide concern. Security Life clearly established that the nature of the entity taxed is not relevant to answering the local versus statewide concern question. When the insurance company claimed exemption from Denver tax, citing statewide concern because regulation of insurance companies by the state is a matter of statewide concern, the Colorado Municipal League, on behalf of the 70 of 104 home rule municipalities that self-collect their sales and use tax, respectfully requests you honor established constitutional principles and jurisprudence with your opposition to this legislation. Passage of this legislation can only lead to expensive, taxpayer-funded litigation for home rule municipalities to have to defend for yet another time that which has been firmly established. This seems to be an utterly avoidable conflict, especially when no issues have yet been raised by construction contractors from whom the tax is collected, nor any school districts. Mr. President, members, I know that things like this can be frustrating because in some states, the state legislature does have jurisdiction, does have the authority. But, no surprise to those of you who've heard me drone on time and time again about our state constitution, in this local control state, we don't have that authority. We don't. We don't. We are a local control state, and the voters went beyond just local control when they voted to add home rule municipalities to our state constitution. We, in my simple country resident, not attorney, part-time citizen legislator opinion, we do not have the authority to do this. And on the question of constitutionality, I've said before, there aren't constitution police that roam these halls and blow a whistle to say, oh, wait, you're not allowed to do that. That's up to us. That's up to us to know the state constitution. It's back there for those watching or listening online. Why am I pointing? There's statute books that include the state constitution. They're right back here in the back of the chamber. If you don't believe me, go look it up. We've all stood here in this well and raised our hand and swore an oath to uphold the state constitution and that of the United States. I'm not here to point fingers, but if you didn't know this was in there, okay. If you forgot it was in there, okay. But it's there. Are you actually going to cast a vote for this bill? No offense to the sponsors. I think they're trying to do a good thing here. But good doesn't make unconstitutional justified. It's not a question of what the motive is, what the goal is. It's unconstitutional. So if you didn't know it was there, okay, you swore an oath to uphold this. If you forgot it was there, okay, you swore an oath to uphold this. Now you know. Now you can't claim you forgot. Do you really want to vote for something that will be taken into court not once, not the first time, not the second time, not the third time, but for the fourth time, to reprove the same thing? We don't have the authority to do this. Who does? Town or city councils and the voters who live in those home rule cities. It's very similar to the conversations that we have on school funding. Since 1876, I think it's Article 10, Section 15, if I remember correctly, we're not in control of instruction in the 178 school districts. We do not have that authority. I talk to voters now when there's candidates for governor out there saying that they'll do X or Y for public schools, and I've talked to voters, you realize that candidate doesn't know what he or she is saying. How much authority does the governor have over public K through 12 schools in this state? None. Why? Since 1876, the Constitution said the local school board has had the authority over instruction. Very similar discussion when it comes to the taxation within home rule cities, municipalities. For the members of CML, thank you for providing such clear, concise, factual information. I know sometimes I've voted with your position over the past 12 years and other times I have not. But there's never been a time that it's so clear. I don't have a choice. I can't vote yes on this because I would knowingly cast a vote against the Constitution that I've sworn to uphold. And for all of those reasons, members, not to embarrass the sponsors, not to divide a caucus, I ask you, you've sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution. That to me means a no vote. It's not voting against another member's bill. It's not voting against the intent. It's voting to uphold what we've sworn to do, and that's uphold the Colorado Constitution. For those reasons, Mr. President, I respectfully, earnestly, sincerely, adamantly ask for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I served this past summer along with my good colleagues from Denver and Centennial. We all served, in fact, all the sponsors of this bill, both in the House and the Senate, were on the Tax Policy Committee. And we did good work. We discussed a lot of issues. And this was an idea or a suggestion that came up, and it sounded very noble, and it is a noble idea because we do want to help. We all felt, most all of us, to help school construction, and it was talked about extensively. And as a result of our discussion, I didn't make it as the sponsor, but I made it as the co-sponsor. And I still think it's a good idea that we do what we can to help local school construction. But I too have been listening and reading about this, and I have come to a change of heart. I don't make mistakes very often, as you know, but this time I'm willing to admit that I've probably made an inadvertent mistake, because the constitutionality, which has been expressed by my good colleague, the senator not from Parker, and others, that I think that we will be just going down, if we pass this bill, which it may pass, it may not, but if we go down this route, this bill will be challenged, this piece of legislation will be challenged, it will be taken to court, and I am not an attorney, thank heavens, unlike my colleague from El Paso County, but I do feel that while this idea is not misguided, the intent is excellent, I support the intent, but I do feel that we will be spinning our wheels and it will be overturned. So with that, I respectfully ask that my name be taken off as a co-sponsor, and I will be a no vote with all due respect to my good colleagues. I know that they're trying to do the right thing, we all are, but so I do ask that I be removed as a co-sponsor. Thank you very much.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I apologize for coming up here a second time, but there were a couple of points that I forgot to make, and I really care about this issue, so I felt it was important to come back up a second time. If you have an opportunity to look at the pink sheet, the fiscal note for this, I think that this is very telling. You know, sometimes we make decisions down here at the state capitol because they're going to save the state money. But in fact, this doesn't save the state any money at all. And if you read the fiscal note, it actually costs the state money to tell local municipalities that they can't collect their own tax. The reason why it's costing the state money to do this is because we actually have to change our tax system in the Department of Revenue. We have to physically go in and change the system, and that is contracted work that will require approximately $3,000 or so. What's more, in the fiscal note, it says, are there other budget impacts? You know, what it doesn't say here is it doesn't say that it helps our public schools. It does say that it's going to decrease local sales tax revenue for home rule municipalities that do not currently exempt sales tax of construction and building materials used in public school construction. There is a local government impact statement on this pink sheet, and it says that, you know, just FYI, this is going to impact those local municipalities, and there aren't that many. I think there's 5. I think there's a handful, which again speaks to the reason why this is not of statewide concern. This doesn't impact our state budget. It's not aligned with our state tax revenue base. This is the government of the state of Colorado coming in and telling local municipalities how to run their budgets and what to do with their revenues and what they are not allowed to collect or not collect. It's really disappointing that we would do something like this right now when, in my personal opinion, I think that we could put that $3,000 that we are now spending to change our tax system toward other uses. So again, I just encourage everyone to please read your pink sheet so that you understand the fiscal impact of this bill today. Thank you.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Great to be with everybody this morning here on thirds. I am not going to read any position papers from Case Casby or CEA, who all are strongly supportive of this bill. Instead, I would like to focus in on what we're actually asking the body to do today. I think we've made a clear argument that this is a matter of statewide concern. Why? Because it has a massive impact on the state budget. Can anybody guess what we spent on school construction last year from the state budget? It was about $300 million. Massive impact on the state budget. We got $21 million less construction because of the issue in this bill. That's one extra school building that we probably could have got done. That is what the interim committee looked at in November. That is what we had bipartisan sponsorship and co-sponsorship on, apparently until 5 minutes ago. And it's deeply disappointing the way that that folks have reacted to that constitutionality argument, because I think this is about as clear-cut case as you can get on statewide concern. And that's the argument we're making. And you know, I appreciate the due respect comments, but we are not the Supreme Court of the state of Colorado. I have no doubt there are folks who might want to litigate this after we pass it. That's fine. That's what the Supreme Court is for. But I think we have made a very strong argument about the statewide impact of this bill. That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the limited state dollars to go as far as possible to catch up on a massive shortfall in school funding for construction. Massive. In fact, the BEST board estimated last year that we were $17 billion behind. Think about that for a second. $17 billion. It is one of the double-digit billion-dollar holes that we have dug ourselves in. School funding, higher ed funding, school construction, maintenance backlog. This is one of the most egregious examples of the shortfall that we have in the state. And all this bill is trying to do is extend the state money as far as possible to get as much catch-up as possible. And we think we've made a very clear statewide argument, and that's exactly what you need to do to move forward with this type of proposal. So I would ask you to vote today on whether or not you think the state has a role to play in school construction. I think we've already answered that together. We've created the best board, we have created mechanisms to fund the best grants. I think we've already answered that question. And having done so, I think it's incumbent on us to try to get as much distance out of that limited funding as we possibly can. And that's all this bill is asking for, is for us to take those limited state dollars and get as much school construction done as quickly as we possibly can to catch up on a massive shortfall. So I ask for your support today to make sure that the state can accomplish that goal.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. I know it's unusual to have this amount of debate on third reading, but there was no debate on second reading on this bill because we had a long week. It was Friday. I think people were tired. They wanted to get out of here. Never underestimate fatigue in the arsenal of weapons that the Majority Leader has. For this bill, colleagues, if I'm being honest, I am torn about it because I have served both as a local city council member and as a school board member. And so I'm a bit torn on this issue. The reality is, though, is that House Bill 1024, Commerce City does charge this tax in their local sales and use tax code. The difference, and I would hold up Commerce City as the example, is that they actually segregate the revenue that they get from this tax, and they have intergovernmental agreements with their school districts to use that money to fund recreational facilities for kids. So ball fields, soccer fields, etc. Commerce City is the example of how you should do this, that they're actually using that money for mutual beneficial use of both the school district and the city. But not every community is like Commerce City. And the reality is that when you have one local government entity taxing another on an issue as important as school construction, there is less money at the end of the day to go around. We simply don't fund the amount of construction that we need to do on our schools. The BEST program is wonderful, very grateful for it, but it is a drop in the bucket in terms of what we need to do to replace our schools. So when we have this issue of local governments taxing one another, it does mean, at the end of the day, less money in the pool to ensure that we complete these school projects. So because not every community is like Commerce City, I do encourage your support for this bill.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in opposition of 1024. I voted no on it, and I believe it was Finance. And keep in mind, the state of Colorado only backfills K-12. The primary responsibility of K-12 funding is the school districts. We're a local control state. There were a number of reasons I voted against the bill in committee. The primary one, of course, as was brought up and pointed out, that this violates the Constitution. But on a personal note, through personal experience, through many years of being a father and picking up and dropping my 4 children, sometimes one at a time, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, at public schools, charter schools, so on and so forth, what I've noticed is the lack of infrastructure around these schools. And this bill, if it were to be signed into law, and I believe it probably will be, but it will directly impact the amount of revenue that local governments have to deal with what they are charged to deal with as it relates to building sidewalks for children, building more XL, decel lanes for the new school. And trust me, I've worked in development. I've seen firsthand, if you're a private developer, the local government wants you to trick it out and all the bells and whistles on the landscaping and the curb and gutter and the drainage and the XL, decel. But it seems to me that the local school districts, they don't quite get held to the same standard. And if you were a parent in this modern day and tried to like pick up or drop your kids off around an elementary or junior high or a high school, it is a madhouse. The traffic is horrible for an hour plus because parents don't have the kids ride the bus as much anymore. And the infrastructure, especially in Adams County, is woefully underfunded. And this bill, in my opinion, will only serve to make the situation worse, to the point of the good senator from Commerce City. I wish, if I had my way, every local government would segregate that money towards infrastructure around schools, and it would sure make me happy personally, and I'm sure a lot of other parents that sit in the line and snake through the parking lots and back up 120th all the way to Highway 2 and 76 in the morning. So it gets so bad that because 27J doesn't have school Mondays, I can go a different route on Mondays here. But if it's Tuesday through Friday, I make the affirmative decision not to go the way where I'll get stuck in the Prairie View Middle and the Prairie View High School line of parents dropping off their children in the morning. So this is a tangible example of what this bill will do to affect local governments statewide. And we're looking at it through the lens of the state of, oh, hey, we're going to save, I believe the good senator from Denver said 21 million a year, and it's another building. But the flip side of that is local governments will miss out on that 21 million a year, and it will mean fewer stoplights, fewer crosswalks, fewer curb and gutter, fewer XL, decel lanes, fewer dollars to plant trees and shrubs along the way and put in sprinkler systems for the schools as well, or the part that the municipality controls. So again, I would ask for a no vote on House Bill 1024, and thank you all for listening.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, upon first looking at this bill, it's like, wow, who wouldn't vote for a tax cut? What a great idea. What a really Republican thing to be doing. But here's the thing. The Constitution matters. Constitution doesn't take a break. And we don't get to take a break from the Constitution. Now, I think it's wonderful. And, you know, coming from my past life experience in local government, I always love to get into those robust discussions with home rule municipalities and school districts who didn't want to fund things like road improvements or sidewalks to their schools, didn't think they needed to go through any local land use control. Fine, we had some great discussions. And I think it's wonderful that the good senator from Commerce City came up here and gave us a great example of intergovernmental cooperation and relationships between Commerce City and their school district. I might just mention that Commerce City exercised their power and their authority enshrined to them under the Constitution, and then exercised their right to develop intergovernmental agreements and work with their school district. It's a great thing to have happen, and it can be happening anywhere, in any home rule municipality, or quite frankly, any municipality. But I just want to read to you what the Constitution actually says, in case you missed it. case you don't think this is important, because no matter how good you think this bill is, no matter how great you think the purpose of this bill is, here's what the Constitution says specifically. It is the intention of this article, Article 20, Section 6, to grant and confirm to the people of all municipalities coming within its provisions the full right of self-government in both local and municipal matters, and the enumeration herein of certain powers shall not be construed to deny such cities and towns and to their people thereof any right or power essential or proper to the full exercise of such right. That's the paragraph in the Constitution that you don't get to just ignore. Cities and municipalities of home rule have this power. And in case you missed it, in case you weren't listening, I'm just going to read this one sentence from the fact sheet that we got from the Colorado Municipal League, who, again, I love to have robust discussions with. Passage of this legislation can only lead to expensive, taxpayer-funded litigation for home rule municipalities to have to defend for yet another time that which has been firmly established. Members, how irresponsible of us to require taxpayers to yet again have to go defend for yet another time settled law. It's 3 cases. Started in 1965. Said right there, they talked about the meaning of Article 20, Section 6, matters of local and municipal concern, what that meant. 1972, came up again apparently. Some legislature then decided to try and preempt home rule taxing authority. Right there, point is that the power to levy sales and use taxes for the support of the local home rule government is essential to the full exercise of the right of self-government granted to such cities under Article 20, Section 6. And then, gosh, 1998. One more time. I don't know how many times we have to be told. Usually, you know, with my grandchildren, number 3 usually works. That and when I tell them I'm going to take something away from them. It says right there, 1998, Berman and Security Life, which were the 2 previous ones I just mentioned, in 65 and 72, for the proposition that the imposition of local sales and use taxes is a matter of local concern, and we will not overrule them. Supreme Court's made it pretty clear. You've been told 3 times, 3, 2, 1, time's up. This is a constitutional issue. Constitution is clear. We don't get to take a break from the Constitution. I would urge a no vote.
Senator Kolker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to everyone for the robust discussion and quoting the Constitution and quoting other resources. And I just want to quote to start off here with the summation, because I feel like I'm in the courtroom right now. The summation of what the bill says exactly that was added to give the purpose of the bill. It says, under current law, out of the state and all local governments across the state, the sales and use tax on construction and building materials used in the construction of public buildings is only levied by home rule cities. The state's ability, this is page 2, line 18, if you want to follow along, to honor its responsibilities under Section 2 of Article 9 of the state constitution to provide for the establishment and maintenance of a thorough and uniform system of free public schools throughout the state is impaired when home rule cities tax public school construction materials, because this tax increases the cost of providing public education within the boundaries of these municipalities as contrasted with public schools located within the boundaries of other municipalities that do not tax these materials. The state's responsibility to provide a thorough and uniform education is further impaired by the incentives created by the current tax disparities specifically insofar as school districts serve the residents of multiple municipalities and not all the municipalities tax public school construction materials. School districts are given incentives to build schools within those municipalities where the sales and use tax is not levied, rather than where the public schools are most needed, thereby depriving students and communities of local education resources. Extending the exemption to include homeroom cities would eliminate these barriers and disparities and assist the state in honoring its responsibilities under Section 2 of Article 9 of the state constitution. The current taxing system also creates negative extraterritorial impacts because taxpayers that reside in school districts that serve both taxing and non-taxing municipalities must subsidize the cost of the sales and use tax levied when public schools are built in municipalities that tax public school construction materials, even when such residents do not reside in the taxing municipality and their children do not attend public schools in the taxing municipality. This amendment added to give a clear declaration and purpose of this bill. The Supreme Court has the right to review and make decisions. It can determine what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate when it comes to home rule. In a few cases, case law makes clear that the only time home rule authority will preempt state statute is when the matter at hand is solely a matter of local concern. This is Webb versus Blackhawk, 2013. In that case in 2013, they made this determination to judge local and statewide concern, to determine whether an ordinance addresses a matter solely of local concern so as not to be preempted by state statute. If a local ordinance conflicts with a state statute in a matter of purely local concern, then the ordinance supersedes state law. If the ordinance conflicts in a matter of statewide or mixed concern, the state statute supersedes the local ordinance. They made it clear how they judge these cases. The case here is, as the senator from Denver said, is this a statewide concern? And I will argue to you it is, because of the funding that we use to fund local schools and their construction. To think about, on a different matter and a different viewpoint on how this works, I was for this bill from the start because I look at it as a local municipality adding a tax onto funding that originally occurs from a tax. So they're taxing a tax. Then what if they're issuing a bond? And a bond is over 30 years. Now they're financing that tax to the local municipalities. School districts in my district, Littleton and Cherry Creek, are both for this bill. And that is enough for me to say that I'm gladly here to support it. Superintendent of Cherry Creek School District, Chris Smith, testified. I'm going to read his quote. The ability to charge sales and use taxes to their school districts for materials used in building and construction means that these municipalities are able to redirect funds from school districts to themselves to fund their municipal budget. It is not good policy to redirect taxpayer funds to another entity. School districts need to retain all of their capital funding sources to meet the myriad of needs they have. Colleagues, I put onto you that this is a matter of statewide concern, and I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1024. Are there any no votes? Senators Smallwood, Priola, Scott, Cook, Minority Leader Holbert. Gardner, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Simpson, Heisey, Zunzinger, Sonnenberg. With a vote of 20 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, House Bill 1024 is passed. Co-sponsors. Majority Leader Moreno. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1060?
House Bill 1060, Representative Serrata, Senator Gonzalez, concerning the establishment of contribution limits under the Fair Campaign Practices Act for candidates for school district director and in connection therewith, making an appropriation.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I move House Bill 1060 on third reading and final passage.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1060. Are there any no votes? Senators Smallwood, Scott, Cook, Minority Leader Holbert, Lundin, Gardner, Liston, Kirkmeyer, Priola, Heisey, Simpson, Sonnenberg. With a vote of 20 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, House Bill 1060 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Winter, Henriksen, Majority Leader Moreno, Jaquez Lewis, Story, Buckner, will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1008?
House Bill 1008, Representative Tipper and Soper, Senators Fenberg and Winter, concerning the federal requirements for the implementation of fertility coverage under health benefit plans.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for third reading and final passage, House Bill 1008.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1008. Are there any no votes? Senators Smallwood, Cook, Priola, Minority Leader Holbert, Lundin, Gardner, Liston, Scott, Kirkmeyer, Heisey, Sonnenberg. With a vote of 21 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, House Bill 1008 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Gonzalez, Henriksen, Majority Leader Moreno, Buckner, Rodriguez, Kolker, Hansen, Janal, Zenzinger, Pedersen, Fields, Story, General Orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The motion is adopted and the Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the General Order, second reading of bills, consent calendar. And Senator Gonzalez will take the chair. I know. Help yourself.
Yeah.
All right, y'all, the committee will come to order, and the coat rule is relaxed for everyone in the chamber. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title? Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1153 to tomorrow, Tuesday, March 29th.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1153 will be laid over. Ms. Cole, will you please read the bill on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar?
House Bill 1209, Representatives Bradfield and Young, Senator Woodward, concerning the continuation of the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging and in connection therewith implementing the recommendation contained in the 2021 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies to sunset the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for the passage of the one bill on the consent calendar, House Bill 1209, and its associated Health and Human Services Committee report.
Is there any discussion on the associated committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of all of the reports to the bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and those reports are adopted. Is there any discussion on any of the bills on the consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the bill on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that bill is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is for the committee to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The aye has it, and that motion is adopted. The committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee met and considered a bill. Ms. Cole, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1209 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1153 laid over until 3/29/2022 and retaining its place on the calendar.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 32 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1209 is amended, passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1153 laid over until 3/29/2022 and retaining its place on the calendar. General Orders, second reading of bill. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we resolve ourselves into the committee of the whole for the general order second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the general order second reading of bills, and Senator Gonzalez will take the chair.
Sorry, I had all my stuff over here. The committee will come to order, and the court rule is relaxed for everyone in the chamber. Ms. Cole, will you please read the Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1089, House Bill 1165, and Senate Bill 114 to tomorrow, Tuesday, March 29th.
The motion before the body is to lay over House Bill 1089, 1165, and Senate Bill 114 to tomorrow. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and those bills will be laid over. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 97?
Senate Bill 97, Senators Pedersen and Rodriguez, Representatives Harrod and Sullivan, concerning the expansion of protections for workers who raise workplace health and safety concerns.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 97 in the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This does have some anticipated fiscal costs to our state, even though there has not been any complaints. We still have to adjust for potential costs in the future, but it is well worth it for extending the basic worker protections. And I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Approps report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, currently Colorado has very few whistleblower protections. If a worker raises health, safety, or other concerns to coworkers or a government agency or the media, they can and have faced retaliation from their employer. At the start of the pandemic in 2020, Colorado adopted a law that we were proud to sponsor to protect workers who spoke out when they witnessed unsafe working conditions that jeopardize their health or that of the public. So far, CDLE has deemed 48 complaints to be valid after investigation, with 7 resulting in settlements for workers and 33 where a worker was issued a notice of right to sue and can take action in district court. This means that the law is working. It is working as intended so that workers can hold their employers accountable in the rare instances where this is a valid reason for ultimately seeking repercussions. Unfortunately, the protections were only in place during a formally declared public health emergency and have now expired, leaving Colorado workers without recourse if they face adverse action for raising concerns. This is an important bill. When I heard from teachers in my districts who were worried about raising concerns with the practices in their buildings, this is important when I heard from nurses and healthcare workers who were worried about whether or not they raised concerns and if their jobs would be at stake. I heard from one of my constituents who didn't know that we actually passed this bill about working in a department store. And when she raised concerns about the practices that they had in place, she unfortunately was ultimately fired. She was able to reach out about the protections that were in place for her instance, and she was rehired. She continues to work there now. So this is just continuing these basic worker protections. When I think about when I was it's not just during a pandemic. I was working at a restaurant years ago as a waitress, and there were things happening that I was incredibly concerned about when I was working there. The cooks were taking a very dangerous degreaser and putting it on very hot grills. It was going up in the air. All of us were going in and breathing it at the end of our shifts when we were bringing our dishes down. I remember raising concern time and time again until I had to stop because I was worried that I would ultimately lose my job. And so it's not just about protecting workers during a pandemic, it's protecting this basic right moving forward, and I ask for your support.
Seeing no further, Senator Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I sit on the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee, and we heard this bill several weeks ago. And as I recollect, there was really limited testimony to this bill. It was opposed by the C3, Colorado Competitive Council, and the Denver Chamber of Commerce. They came and testified against the bill. And the question being is that, yes, there's isolated instances, but they really were wondering is there a real problem with this because there was such limited testimony. Are we trying to fix something, with all due respect to the sponsors, that we don't see much evidence of? Also, the fiscal note is of deep concern to us, to me and to others, is that it brings up a fiscal note of over $700,000 this year as well as over $700,000 next year, and it further grows the size of government, bringing on over 5 FTEs this year and over 5 next year. And as we all know, once you get a program in place, the budget continues to grow, and so does the number of FTEs. We did hear opposition and spoke against this bill. With all due respect to the sponsors, I would ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 97. Thank you.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too rise in opposition of Senate Bill 97. I appreciate the folks in the media bringing this to my attention that this was something that was coming back. It did not go through any of the committees that I sit on. So I'm going to be no. I want to explain why. The good senator from El Paso County already mentioned one, significant more growth in government to handle this. And to remind everyone, what we're dealing with here is Title 8, Article 14.4, which might have sounded great in the midst of a global pandemic, which was worker rights related to a public health emergency. That is what this is about. It's in your statute books. Worker rights related to a public health emergency. And what we heard then was, we've got these business owners that aren't taking, or managers, supervisors, foremen, they aren't taking the proper precautions in light of a pandemic. They're not following the CDC's rules or local health department rules. We need to do something to crack down on these bad businesses that aren't complying with the public health emergency rules. And my concern at that time was, number one, growth of government, and number two, specifically, and I'm surprised that nobody's talked about changing this in this new bill, at least I don't see that it's changed, is when we get to 18-14.4-107, when we talk about what are we going to do with the monies here. Let me read this to you. The proceeds of any judgment entered pursuant to this section shall be distributed as follows. So there's a whistleblower on the scene, and there's going to be a judgment. Somebody's going to have to pay money. Where does that money go? 75% to the division for enforcement of this article. 75% of the money is going right back into the government, in addition to the full-time employees that we're putting on scene to handle this. 25% is going to the first whistleblower that filed the action. I don't think that's the message that we're trying to send the citizens, is that, hey, by reporting these things, we're going to just simply grow government and fatten the wallets of government. And now, colleagues, this is no longer about a public health emergency. You'll notice on the bill, page 2, lines 9, line 16, what we've done is simply strike the words public health emergency. So this is now just related to anything that any attorney might find fits the definition of, and I quote, an otherwise significant workplace threat to health or safety, with no definition. A significant workplace threat. I guess we'll let the lawyers figure that out, but I'm going to be a no vote on Senate Bill 97.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 97. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and Senate Bill 97 is adopted. Ms. Cole, will you please read the title to House Bill 1049?
House Bill 1049, Representatives Bacon and Rick, Senators Pedersen and Bridges, concerning prohibiting a post-secondary institution from making payment of an outstanding balance on a student's account, a condition of issuing the student's documents.
Go ahead.
Who would like to begin? Senator Pedersen.
Move it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1049 and the Education Committee report.
To the Education Committee report.
There were several amendments on some stakeholder work that was done, and I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion on the Education report? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Ed Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that committee report is adopted. To the bill. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1049 is about the Colorado value of opportunity. 3/4 of all jobs in Colorado require some kind of education beyond high school. And when you apply for those jobs, oftentimes they want proof. Too many institutions of higher education right now are holding transcripts for ransom. They will only allow you to share that proof if you don't have any debt with that institution. That can be something as innocuous as a parking ticket. Now, it can also include tuition, but keep in mind, this is not a debt relief bill. This bill does not eliminate the obligation that students have to pay their debts. This is a bill about opportunity. It says, if you want to get a job, if you want to get financial aid, if you want to continue getting a higher education certificate that you need to get a job in order to pay off your debt, that the institution of higher education that holds your transcript can't say no. They cannot deny your ability to prove that you have the education that you have. And that's all this bill does. This is not a debt relief bill. This doesn't alleviate anyone of the responsibility to pay what it is that they owe. This bill is about opportunity, and I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank my other sponsor for your work in leading on this issue and joining me on this bill, and for all of the advocates who have worked on this here in Colorado and across the nation. Right now, across the country, transcript withholding is a widespread, highly utilized debt collection tactic that creates immediate barriers preventing students from re-enrolling, transferring schools, or obtaining access to employment. This is a simple step that we can take here in Colorado to make sure that the students who are lower income are able to reduce those barriers, get a job quicker, and pay down their debts. This is about increasing access to opportunity, and I ask for your support.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the effort and the intent behind this bill, 1049, and the sponsor's presentation of it. But it's a little bit more nuanced than exactly as presented. Here's the challenge. Y'all bought a vehicle, a car perhaps, with a financing. You get access to the car, you use the car, you drive the car, you make your payments, but you don't get the title. You don't get the title of that car until you pay the car off. And when you pay the car off, you get the title. And you have free and clear, unencumbered proof that you have the vehicle, it's your vehicle. You could sell it. You could do whatever you want with it. This bill, as presented, represents to you that you can't use the proof of your education to advance, to get a job, to move on, to do whatever, unless this bill passes and it takes away the institutions of higher education's ability to use that title to that education as a tool for making sure that education actually gets paid for. Now, here's the truth of what's going on. If I have debts and obligations to my college and I need to let an employer know that I have, in fact, got the education, I can reach out to, and almost every institution I spoke with said, yes, under those circumstances, we do that, to that institution and say, institution of higher education where I went to school and I still owe money, would you please show this employer to whom I'm applying for a job, would you show them my transcript? Would you show them proof that I actually went to college and succeeded? And everybody says, all the institutions of higher education say, yeah, under that circumstances we will, but we won't give you the transcript because you still owe us money. You need to pay your obligation. So there's really a personal responsibility element that enters into this as well, and you could back up and say, what is a higher education diploma worth? Well, it's proof that you're a responsible individual. You spent 2 or 3 or 4 years showing up at classes, taking the tests, passing the exams, writing the term papers, doing what it was over an extended period of time to prove you were responsible. What else did you do? You paid your tuition bills. You paid your room and board bills. You paid your bills. And that's part of the proof that's in the pudding of an advanced diploma as well. And so I think there's an element of seeking to provide relief from part of the responsibility associated with that degree. So I just want to be really clear that there is the ability to prove up, to get the job, to apply to the next institution, whatever. All of the higher education institutions that I've interacted with said, we will provide that. We just won't give away, we won't give that clear title, as I was using in the metaphor of an automobile purchase, to someone until they actually clear the title and pay it off. So that's point one. Point two, the institutions of higher education of Colorado have been really clear. They've done the math on this. And if this tool that is part of the contract between one adult and an institution that says, I will pay my bills, all those higher education institutions have said the impact on tuition, if we lose this ability to cause people to pay for that which they owe, would be 8 to 14% tuition increase. That's massive. So what you're doing then is you're increasing the burden of higher education on everyone to protect a limited few who are choosing not to interact in a meaningful client business relationship with the institution of higher education and paying off the obligation that they have. So I rise in opposition to 1049 based on those arguments. I could dive into other arguments as well. I think perhaps we could amend this bill to improve the potentiality for a better relationship between students and the institutions. But at this point, I was in committee and I am at this point a no on 1049. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the comments of the good senator from Monument. The only thing this bill requires is that the institution of higher education share that transcript with the potential employer, with the potential institution of higher education. There's nothing in this bill that requires the institution to share that transcript with the student. So that is exactly what this bill already says, and it's great to hear that every institution in the state is perfectly willing to share that transcript with an employer, with another institution of higher education, with whoever it is that needs to see that in order to provide financial aid, because that's all this bill says. So I'm relieved to hear that every institution in the state supports doing that. Wonderful news. I ask for an aye vote in accordance with what it is that institutions in the state say they would already do. Thank you.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I rise in opposition to House Bill 22-1049. And I guess maybe I need to look to the bill summary. I didn't see a amendment, but it speaks to the bill prohibits a post-secondary institution from refusing to provide a transcript or diploma for a current or former student on the grounds that the student owes debt. I think that's what the bill says. Conditioning, second bullet, I'm just reading from the bill under the summary. Conditioning the provision of a transcript or diploma on the payment of debt other than a fee charged to provide the transcript or diploma. It goes on. So this bill is about refusing to provide a transcript if the student owes a debt. And I think it's wonderful that the good senator from Cherry Creek? Cherry Hills.
No.
Thank you.
Arapahoe County or Greenwood Village.
Let me look up here.
Either way.
Bridget. Arapahoe County.
Arapahoe County.
Okay, sorry. I just think it's wonderful, though, that he comes up here and talks about today how this is a bill about the value of opportunity. Because in committee, he talked about his conflict between warring values. That, you ought to pay your debt. And that we all recognize that getting a job, a better job, that you need your transcript. And he made the comments about, that if you can't pay off your hospital bills, they don't refuse you a birth certificate. And he also made the comment about taxes and IRS, that, if you can't pay those, they still come after you. But what he also mentioned during his comments was about, you know, hospitals and the IRS, they require payment plans. If you can't pay your debt, if you can't pay your hospital bill, they don't say, oh, here you go. Here's that birth certificate. Go ahead, walk out the door. We'll think about it later. They don't do that. They make you put in place a payment plan. Same with the IRS. They make you put in a payment plan, and they all charge you interest, by the way. So, Madam Chair, I have an amendment.
There is an amendment at the desk. Ms. Cole, will you please read L015 today, House Bill 1049?
Amendment L015 by Senator
Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L015.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, L015 would require that the student enter into a mutually agreed upon payment plan with the institution of higher education within a time frame that is acceptable to both parties. And here's why this is extremely important. What we heard from the institutions of higher ed, along with the fact that they said this would, like for example, SMU said that they would anticipate a 13% tuition increase, which would be an $8 million financial impact to them. And other institutions of higher ed said anywhere from 8 to 14% increase. Could be as high as $32 million on the high end for CSU. What this would do is require that the student work with the higher ed institution to put in place a payment plan, which then would allow them to get a copy of their transcript. And the higher education institution would have yet another contract in place that says, here's the plan. And it has to be, in this case, it has to be entered into a mutually agreed upon payment plan. So if the student can only afford to pay $10 a month, then they can work with the higher education institution to only pay $10 a month. Or if they want to say, look, we'll get this paid off within, you know, a 3 or 4 year period, depending on what it is, or work with the institution, they all have to come in together, and they have to agree upon the payment plan. Both parties, higher education and the student, have to agree upon the payment plan, and the time frame has to be acceptable for both. So the higher education institution couldn't come and say, look, you've got to pay this within 2 years of your graduation, even though we're not sure you have the money. You still have to pay it no matter what, and put the student into a different situation. Here's why this amendment is so important. Because as we were listening to the institutions of higher education, they talked about that if they are required to hand out a transcript when the student hadn't paid off their debt, and the student doesn't pay off their debt, and it takes them an extended length of time, that what will happen to the student is something worse than not paying off their debt and not getting the transcript and not being able to go get a better job. It'll put them into debt collection. And I think that's the last thing that we want to have happen to these students who are already having a difficult time apparently paying off a debt, an agreement that they had with the school district to get their education, that they would pay this amount, and now they're having difficulty paying it off, and now they want to just get their transcript regardless. But this would, if we don't have something like this in place, the higher education institutions were very clear that if there isn't a required payment plan, if they can't get their debt collections, if they can't get the student to pay in a reasonable amount of time, that they will send it to debt collection. And for anyone who has been to debt collection, not myself, but if anyone else has, or if anyone knows anyone that's been to debt collection, you know what that does to your credit rating. And you know that that takes a long time to get that back into place and get that to a position where that individual has a higher credit rating and can get better interest rates, you know, on mortgages, or be able to go out and buy a car, or be able to go out and buy, you know, household furniture or things of that nature. Higher institutions stated in committee that if there isn't a payment plan in place, if there isn't a way for them to ensure that they're going to get paid, that debt collection Sending the student to debt collection will become a primary way to recover the debt. That is absolutely the wrong way to be going. So I urge a aye vote on Amendment L015. Thank you.
Further discussion to the amendment? Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard in committee from students that had been sent to debt collection and still could not get a copy of their transcript. We need this bill to make sure that students are getting the transcripts they need to get the jobs that will allow them to pay off the debt that they owe. So I would encourage a no vote on this because it still allows the institution to hold that transcript for ransom, which we don't want to do. This still allows the institution to set the terms of what that repayment plan has to be, and we want to make sure that students have the ability to get the job that they need to pay off the debt that they owe. I ask for a no vote.
Further discussion on L15, Senator Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, members, I urge an aye vote on L015 because if I heard the sponsor of the amendment, which correctly, if I did, is that what this amendment does is the institution of higher learning is saying to the student who owes the debt, look, we will work with you. You will sign. You're now a emancipated an adult because most of these students are going to be 18, 19, 20, 21 years older, maybe even in their mid-20s, maybe even their 30s. They should know by now, as an adult, that when you sign a document, that you're going to be responsible for making that payment. And what this does is the institution of higher learning says, look, you owe us $1,000. Let's just use a round, simple number. You owe us $1,000. We will allow you to pay $20 a month for the next 3 or 4 years to pay off your debt. $20 a month, and yet we will still give you, send that transcript or whatever document that you need. So this satisfies both parties. The student who is now an adult, you know, you're responsible for your actions. It allows that student to still get their transcript, and yet you are signing a obligation to that institution of higher learning that yes, I will pay back that debt. So you win both ways. I'm going to get my transcript still sent, and I know that I have an obligation. You know, they're really, if we don't have a little bit of teeth in this, is there's going to be a lot of students that are going to say, look, I got my transcript, and to heck with it. I got what I wanted, and I still owe that institution $1,000 or more. It may be a lot more in some cases. And then they just blow it off, and then the institution will ultimately report that debt, if I'm not that obligation, to the various credit reporting agencies, and that is going to be with the student the rest of their lives. And then they wonder why they can't have good credit, why their credit scores go way down. So this really helps the student in multiple ways. I urge and I vote on L015. It's a well thought out, reasonable amendment. I urge and I vote. Thank you.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of Amendment L015. This simply would keep the student and the institution in relationship. It's making both sides of the pre-existing relationship continue to participate in that engagement until the financial obligation is met. And it offers up a payment plan where both sides agree that's acceptable. You know, the amendment says, has entered into a mutually agreed upon payment plan with the institution of higher education within a time frame acceptable to both parties. Sounds like a pretty good contract to me. Sounds like an introductory course into a graduate level experience and responsibility. I think that it's completely appropriate that in fact we should give both the institution and the individual the opportunity to avoid the more abrupt and challenging methods of resolving financial challenges. You've probably all heard stories. Some of you may have experienced. I personally haven't. I have, quite frankly, been on the other side of some relationships that were creditor relationships where somebody wasn't meeting their obligation, and I was forced to use more challenging means to try and collect the money. And it's a lose-lose. I ended up paying legal fees, I ended up paying court costs, I ended up paying all sorts of expenses to try and collect the debt that I was logically owed, rightfully owed, and I didn't get even a small fraction of the money that I was trying to collect. And the other side, at the end of the day, it injured their credit record, which is something that follows you forever and ever and ever. So it is onerous and burdensome. This amendment would seek to resolve that problem, keep the responsible relationship in place, provide an opportunity for both sides to come to a conclusion that is mutually beneficial, and quite frankly, I think an acknowledgement of the inherent responsibility and, quite frankly, the opportunity that both sides would seek to honor. I urge your support of Amendment L015.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members, I rise in support of L015. This amendment, in my opinion, basically calls a bluff on the entire bill, because if the student is actually fervently intending to eventually pay the tuition and fees or whatever, fines, tickets that are accompanied a part of the process, the years or year that they were in an institution of higher education, then therefore they would completely be fine with going down this route, setting up a payment plan. It doesn't need to be over 3 or 5 years. It could be over 20 years, lining up with whatever student loans they took out, so on and so forth. So I appreciate the sponsor of this amendment. It's very thoughtful and really cuts to the point of what the entire debate on the bill is. Are we putting in statute a loophole that any student going forward, probably especially the ones going to law school, because they'll probably teach this area of statute in freshman law class, would come up with some pretext and some story on their first job application to basically get that diploma, get that, not just diploma, but the records of the classes they took, the GPA, so on and so forth. And I got, a number of copies of that when I graduated, and I got my deposit back because I didn't cause any damage or didn't have any outstanding fines or fees or tickets, so on and so forth. You just make copies of it in perpetuity, and no matter what jobs or things come about the rest of your life, you will always have a number of paper copies of your transcripts. So we heard this bill in committee. There were a number of moving stories, but still, this bill, in my opinion, when it's fully implemented, will open up a pretty sizable, I won't say huge, because I can't imagine every student or almost every student that attends higher education in the state of Colorado in the coming decades is going to purposely, from day one, try to walk out on their obligations. I still believe most people try to do the right thing, but nevertheless, it will directly, indirectly, lead to an increase in tuition for my kids, your grandkids, so on and so forth, and which is just, if you look at the increase in tuition, honestly, the last 30 or 40 years in the state of Colorado, it's horrible. And it's because of a number of reasons. The institutions have done their best to economize, but a lot of it comes from, the state just not putting forth the share of state funding that they used to back in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And we can argue about the reasons for that, but in my opinion, this bill, and I'll speak to the amendment, because the amendment would definitely lighten the burden, in my opinion, that this bill will foist upon higher education entities in the state of Colorado and lead to the spiral of higher tuition, fewer kids able to afford, so on and so forth, taking out more student debt, unable to afford the first starter home, so on and so on and so on. And so I really passionately would ask for an aye vote on L015, and I would ask for a division.
A division has been requested. Okay. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be clear what this amendment does and where it's inserted. So it would read like this. This is how the bill would end up reading. If the student has entered into a mutually agreed upon payment plan with the institution of higher education within a time frame acceptable to both parties, and here's the part that's already in the bill, and can demonstrate that the transcript or diploma is needed for one of the following exemptions: a job application, transferring to another post-secondary institution, applying for state, federal, or institutional financial aid, pursuit of opportunities in the military or National Guard, or E, pursuit of other post-secondary opportunities. So again, this amendment just keeps a responsible relationship in place between the student and the higher ed education institution, and keeps the student from being sent to debt collection, which would be extremely detrimental to them for the rest of their lives. So it is in place. I would urge enthusiastically and passionately an aye vote for this amendment.
I love all these adjectives. Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I enthusiastically encourage a no vote on this amendment because with this, vociferously urge a no vote, because with this amendment, the institutions still hold the power. The institutions still can deny a student a transcript that they need in order to get a job so they're in a position to pay off what they owe. Again, this bill is not about forgiving debt. This amendment says that institutions still maintain the power in deciding when a transcript is released to students. Students need these transcripts to get jobs, to pay off debts. I urge a no vote, vociferously urge a no vote on this amendment.
I'd like to correct the record. I believe that vociferously and enthusiastically are adverbs, not adjectives, but a division has been requested, and all those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. The motion is the adoption of L15 to House Bill 1049. All those in favor, please stand.
You don't have to do the Nazi salute, Lundy. That's a bad look.
All right, y'all.
I don't think there's any doubt.
Please be seated.
Next time, really.
All opposed, please stand. The chair is not in doubt. The motion for the adoption of L15 fails. Seeing no further, Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to House Bill 1049, and it's kind of awkward for me to be in opposition because, as I recall, I was the prime sponsor of a bill that did very much this relative to high schools. But I took a close look at it. Because I sponsored that bill and enthusiastically supported it, why wouldn't I support this, moving it up to higher ed? So in looking at the bill closely, I went to the current version of the bill, which is called the re-engrossed version, which for this bill would be the second version after that introduced, the version introduced. And in the re-engrossed version, we can find lots and lots of gray shading in the bill. What that means is since all of the language under the bill, under the enacting clause, is in gray shading, there was a strike below offered in the House, which was adopted in a committee report on second reading in the House on February 24th. So, the re-engrossed version of the bill here before us, working through committee, and then the committee report, Committee on Education, that was adopted to the bill. And earlier there was discussion about, does it allow an institution of higher education to release the transcript, the information to the student or a potential employer? You know, when I read the engrossed version, it was pretty close that, or pretty clear that it did. But then if I read the actual committee report that's been adopted, and my question is, would the institution be required or allowed to release the transcript or diploma to a current or former student? That was the issue I was interested in. So I read the actual committee report, and here's what it says. Page 3, strike lines 14 through 27 and substitute. So substitute means that what's there now isn't going to be there, and we're going to use this language. 2A. This is fascinating, I think. A post-secondary institution may refuse to provide a transcript, or a diploma to a current or former student on the grounds that the student owes a debt for tuition, room and board fees, or financial aid funds. B, notwithstanding subsection 2A, which is what I just read, that said they may provide that, notwithstanding subsection 2A of this section, this same section, a post-secondary institution shall not refuse to provide a transcript or diploma to a current or former student on the grounds that the student owes a debt or other than a debt for tuition, room and board fees, or financial aid funds, or if the student cannot demonstrate that the transcript or diploma is needed for one of the following exceptions: a job application, transferring to another post-secondary institution, applying for state, federal, or institutional financial aid. So it says that they can't, and then I guess it says that they can't again. And it seems unnecessarily confusing that we would repeat that. I think that the re-engrossed version actually was more clear, but I can understand how some people might be confused. It says clearly that they may refuse to provide, and then it says they shall not refuse to provide, based on what seems to be the same language. So, again, it is frustrating when we have such lack of clarity in what we vote on. But this says an institution may refuse to provide a transcript or diploma, and then it says, notwithstanding section 2A, what I just read, a post-secondary institution shall not refuse. So if they shall not, where's the may? Why wouldn't it just say they shall not? Why tell them that they may refuse to provide a transcript or diploma to a current or former student on the grounds that the student owes a debt for tuition, room and board fees, or financial aid funds? And then right after that it says, notwithstanding what we just said, a post-secondary institution shall not refuse to provide a transcript or diploma to a current or former student based on those same things. What does that mean? You may, so long as you don't. I think is what it says there. You have the choice. You can do this so long as you don't. Is the way I translate that. That's government doublespeak. This is, I don't want to be critical of the drafter. It was approved by the committee. So what does it mean? They may, or they're not allowed to, because it seems to me like it says both. So for now, I ask Madam Chair for a no vote on House Bill 1049, and it's not because I want students to be in an awkward position where they're withheld this information. As we've already heard, I believe it's true that every higher education, Institute of Higher Education in Colorado says they don't withhold. If it was more clear, I think I could possibly be in support because, again, I did this type of bill for high schools, for students coming out of high school, off to college, looking for a job. But this bill is unnecessarily confusing in its original, or in its current state. I think it was less confusing in its prior state. And because of that, I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on that, first of all, it was the decision of the drafter to put it that way. I think it's still clear. Understand there may be some difficulties there. But more importantly, transcripts are being withheld. They are being withheld today. We heard person after person after person in committee talking about how their transcript has been withheld and the ways that that has negatively impacted their life. And this bill just says you can't withhold the transcript. That's all this bill says. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is, I want to be clear because this was brought up earlier. It's really clear to me that as drafted, and I do agree the construction is unusual, as drafted, it's about the clear title to the piece of paper. You may give it except you can't. And the challenge around all this is the institutions are saying we're providing the information directly, we're just not giving the clear title to the student until they pay their bills. That's the distinction. The information isn't being withheld in the cases where a student actually needs that information to be transmitted. That's being done on behalf of the student. But the student isn't being given the clear title. This bill would just give the student the clear title to their education, if you will, even when they haven't paid the bills. And that's the problem with the bill. I urge your opposition, your no vote on House Bill 1049. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1049. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and 1049 is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Also, my sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, my sixth grade English teacher, would be proud of me today. Ms. Cole, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 97 is amended, passed on second reading in order, engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1049 is amended, passed on second reading in order, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1089, House Bill 1165, Senate Bill 114 laid over until 3/29/2022 and retaining their place on the calendar.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 32 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 97 is amended, passed on second reading in order, engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1049 as amended, passed on second reading in order, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1089, House Bill 1165, Senate Bill 114 laid over until 3/29/2022 and retaining their place on the calendar. Introduction of bills.
Senate Bill 181, Senators Bridges and Simpson, Representatives Cutter and Van Beber, concerning the Behavioral Health Administration Plan to address issues regarding the delivery of behavioral health care services in the state.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 182, Senators Hansen and Corn, Representative Doherty, concerning measures to address economic mobility for Coloradans and in connection therewith creating the Economic Mobility Program within the Department of Public Health and Environment.
Finance.
Senate Bill 183, Senators Winter and Gardner, Representatives Duran and Weissman, concerning programs that provide services to crime victims.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 184, Senators Fenberg and Pedersen, Representatives Asgar and Tipper, concerning the authority for a member of the General Assembly to be absent during the legislative session without forfeiting compensation.
State Veterans and Military Affairs.
House Bill 1004, Representative Ortiz and Young, Senators Fields and Coker, concerning a transfer from the general fund to the licensing services cash fund.
Appropriations. Message from the House.
The House has adopted and returns herewith Senate Joint Resolution 007.
Announcements. Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. And the Senate Health and Human Services Committee will meet today at 1:30. We are going to be hearing 2 bills, not 4 bills. We will be hearing House Bill 1227 and House Bill 1214. We are not hearing Senate Bill 154 or Senate Bill 156. They have been laid over. We'll also have one governor's confirmation from the Colorado Traumatic Brain Injury and Trust Fund Board. See you at 1:30.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I just want to let you know that tomorrow, March 29th, is EMS Day at the Capitol. That's for the emergency medical services people, the good people who save our lives out there when there's a severe wreck, you're out there stranded on the highway or whatever. These are the people who save our lives, your friends' lives. Tomorrow they'll be here in force, and they're having a reception from 5 to 8 or 8:30 down at the University Club. You're all invited to come meet the people from your districts who save your and your constituents' lives every day. Come say hello to them. They'll be the chiefs, the managers, the directors, the rank and file. So it's EMS Day tomorrow and the reception. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the members of Senate Appropriations, we have a special meeting tomorrow on a Tuesday. We'll start at 8:45, so give everybody a little more time to gather. We have 4 bills that we'll be looking at. House Bill 1247, 1286, Senate Bill 146, and Senate Bill 145. So a relatively short appropriations meeting by the calendar. And we'll start at 8:45 LSBB. See you soon.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adjourn until tomorrow, Tuesday, March 29th at 9 a.m.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will adjourn until tomorrow, Tuesday, March 29th at 9 a.m.